Hello, everyone.
Hi everyone! Today we're going to talk about something that I experienced while I was pregnant. Basically, I had hypochondria. So it was a lot of things in my head. So I'll first go with a background. I've always kind of been hypochondriac, so not to an extreme case. So I was not the kind of person who was visiting doctors after doctors to get because I was convinced I was sick. Now I was not that kind, but I've been reading medical encyclopedias since I was like 6.
You were self-diagnosing your own
Yes.
conditions.
Yes, so I remember when I was younger, my mom had the kid illness encyclopedia or something like that, and I would find myself a new illness. So every time, let's say I had a headache, I thought I had meningitis. I have diagnosed my brother. Actually, my brother had an infection, and I said, "This is what it is." And my mom was like, so she took my brother to the doctor, and it's exactly what it was. So she was quite impressed. But myself, when I was way younger, like 7 or 8, I was convinced I had diabetes. So I would smell my pee every single time I'd go to the toilet just to make sure it didn't smell sweet, because I read that sweet smelling pee is a symptom of diabetes, and I was scared every time I was thirsty because I was like, oh, maybe I've got diabetes. If I would go to the toilet, I'd be scared. Like a lot of often, I'd scared I had diabetes. So yeah, a lot of my life I've been scared of things. Obviously, there's been cancer in my family, so cancer has always been one of my worry, which is.
Warranted.
It's warranted because there's a lot of people who have cancer, and I mean, there's been in my family, but it's been to a point where every time there's something, I was like, I have cancer. And it has pushed me to do good things because it's the fear of cancer in a way that has pushed me to go plant-based, go vegan. So it's never been very destructive, but it's always kind of brought some stress in my life. So, but when I got pregnant, I think with all the pregnancy hormones and everything, it got to a pretty disruptive point. So if first, obviously the 3 first months are stressful, I think, for any woman, because that's when the risk of miscarriage is the highest. So obviously it's stressful. So every day I would just if I felt a little bit of cramping or something, I'd be like, oh, that's it, I'm having a miscarriage. And it would but I think it's common for women to be stressed during the first 3 months. So then it was a short, so at 12 weeks, when I hit the 13 weeks, when I had my 13-week scan, at first I was, oh, that's good, because my doctor told me you're out of the danger zone. So for like a few minutes I was, good, like I can relax, I can enjoy my pregnancy. But then I read in a book called What to Expect When You're Expecting, which basically every single pregnant woman know that book, have that book. It's a great book, but however, it basically pulls out anything that can happen. So when you are prone to hypochondria like me, it's not a good idea. So I read something about a thing that is called incompetent cervix, which basically usually is one of the main cause of late miscarriage. So miscarriages up to even 24 weeks. So I read about it, and it planted a seed. And then I Googled it, and then I found out that people who had work done on their cervix, so for example, like I did, I had precancerous cell laser in 2009. Well, that can cause, that can be a risk of incompetent cervix. So I became convinced that I was gonna have incompetent cervix. And at first I was like, I talked about that with Luke, and Luke was like, nah, that's fine, like, don't worry about it. But then I was going on all the message boards and reading.
Trying to find something that was actually wrong with you.
And then you get to a point where you are aware of every single little feelings in your body, and it's just like, so I was feeling like maybe if I was, and of course you're feeling different things because you're pregnant. there's things happening in your body that have never happened before. But I interpreted every of those things as a sign that I had incompetent cervix.
And I think it's just your belief that you had something wrong fed into the fact that you actually had physical systems which fed into this fear that you had. So you're just kind of finding more and more symptoms of
like, so I found, like, I was like, it was like, so for example, if I was feeling like going to the toilet for number 2, well, I was like, maybe I'm having contractions, maybe I'm gonna, my cervix is giving up, blah, blah, blah. So at some point it got so much that I was at work one morning and I had a panic attack, and my work was very close to my clinic, to the hospital that I eventually gave birth, where my OB was. So I walked there and went there as in an emergency, and I said, you need to measure my cervix. So I paid a few $100s to get a special scan. So they gave me, because I was like, they had to calm me down. They had to put me on like a bed and just like get me to calm down, because I was crying and I couldn't breathe, and I felt all kinds of odd sensations, blah, blah, blah. And then, so I paid a few $100s to get a special scan where they measured exactly the length of my cervix. The girl's job was just to do that, so she wouldn't answer any of my question. All she said was, your cervix is closed. So at least I was like, oh. But then I waited. So my doctor was like, okay. She was like, yeah, no, there's no sign of incompetent cervix. It's measuring fine. But then I was like, what do you mean fine? She's like, well, it's on the shorter side, but it's fine. In my opinion, it's no risk. But then obviously I ran with this number, and okay, so I was fine for a few minutes, and then after that I Googled the number that it gave, and it showed me that I was about 15% in risk of getting a premature child, because my cervix was on the shorter side. So that stayed in my head. So I became convinced that I was going to have a premature baby.
which she wasn't.
Which she was really not. But, so I had that in my head. So I was like really stressed. And then, so then going on that, I was kind of forgot about the incompetent cervix thing. But then, because I was always so aware of my body, which is coming from the fact that I've been training for so long, I started feeling the Braxton Hicks contractions, which are practice contraction, which every woman have. But the thing is, not every woman feel them. But I started feeling them at 21, 22 weeks. So it was just like light tightenings. But then, because I was so aware, because I was always touching myself there, because just to check, I was feeling them. But then at some point, let's say I had a big day at work, I would go up and down the stairs a lot at work, and then as well I would walk sometimes from the station, and then I would train as well. So at some point I started feeling tightening a lot at night. So it wasn't strong, it was not painful, but I would feel them, and sometimes I would count them, and I would feel quite a few in an hour, only at night. So I started searching that, and I started realizing, oh my God, I might be at risk for early labor. And then I was just at like 22, 23 weeks. So if I would give birth now, I would give birth to a non-viable baby. So I was like, whoa, so I was freaking out. I went to the doctor and I said, I am having like loads of Braxton Hicks contractions. So she looked, and she looked at my cervix again, nothing wrong. Everything was fine. But she said, it's a good thing that I commend you for being sensitive to this, because I know you have had work done on your cervix. So yes, we need to be a bit more careful. But then she said, but with experience, it is pretty much the reason. 99%, it's probably just the fact that you're very tight in this area because you're fit and your abdominal muscles are tight. So for your uterus to expand, it's being a little hard. So your uterus is cramping a little bit. So that's why you're having those contractions, those little practice contractions. And plus, most women would have them and not feel them, but you do feel them. But she's like, just to be on the safe side, I'll give you a very small amount of a muscle relaxant, just so we can keep it at bay, in case it is the little small chance that it could be actually damageable, and it could be thinning out your cervix. So she put me on a small dose of muscle relaxant that I took up to week 35, but probably for no reasons. But she was on the safe side with me, which I appreciated, and I never felt judged as well. But she saw that I was probably a little bit stressed. But then, so that was my second freak out. And then again, in what to expect when you're expecting, I read about this other condition that is a condition of the liver that happens when you're pregnant. Just talking about it now makes me laugh so much. But when it was happening, it was just so stressful. And I'm talking about it because I'm sure that it happens to other women. And I want them to know that, yeah, it happens. And you get to a point where you don't know if it's because they always say, moms, trust your instinct. But I didn't know if it was my fear or instinct anymore. And it's very, very stressful. So I got to the point where I believed at 30 weeks, I believed that I had this rare, it's called ICP. I don't know what the short is for, but it's basically a liver condition that you have when you're pregnant, which is not dangerous for yourself, but it's dangerous for the baby. It can actually cause stillborn. So I became at first I was like scratching a little bit on my stomach, because the stomach expands and then the skin gets a little bit dry. But then I was like, so I read that sometimes it started on the stomach, but it was mainly hands and feet that were itchy. That was one of the main symptom of that condition, ICP. So then all of a sudden, it's like I manifested
the itch
under my feet, which I still like. I have dry skin. I have dry skin under my feet, which is why it itched. But in my head, I was like, what if? And then I read, like, most of the time it's like very, very itchy, which it was not for me. But they said it can be, there's a website that say it can be mild. And it doesn't mean that you have only a mild condition. It's just that that's how it manifests in you. So I was convinced I had this. It was just like, again, I spent like hours on message boards and stuff. And it was also, I was doing that all the time at night, sometimes at work. And it was just constant. I was just so worried. And I was just like, that's it. What if? So I talked about it to my doctor in 2 appointments. And 2 times she was like, no. Like, I'm not giving you the blood test. You do not have it. And then I asked
my GP.
Then we asked the GP, and then the GP was like, no, like the blood test is expensive, blah blah blah, and
it'll take about 2 weeks, which would bring us to close to her, being what, 39 or
yeah. So it was
9 weeks.
So obviously it was just I was not, my symptoms were not strong enough for it to be a worry. I'm sure that if I would have complained to my doctor that I cannot sleep at night because I'm itching so bad, and I would have like major like marks under my feet or somewhere else, she would have been like, yes, let's do the test. But she could see that it was just another worry of mine. And so that was my last one, and it basically lasted pretty much until the end. But at the end, I was starting to like control it a lot more, so it was not as bad, and I had other worries on my mind, such as delivery. So that's pretty much the last one, and thank God, like, everything just went with after that with the delivery. Obviously I was scared that it would continue and I would project that on my baby. When obviously I do worry about her and her health, but I feel I've been a lot more rational since she was born. So I'm pretty sure that it was all caused by the pregnancy hormones and how the brain is wired when you're pregnant. So I'm really happy to report that I'm a lot more relaxed health-wise for myself and for Sienna. So yeah, I'm really happy about that. So yeah, I really hope that if you're going through that, either when you're pregnant or in your life, that you're not alone. You're not crazy. It does happen. And it's just there's to find a middle between. So yes, sometimes you do feel symptoms, and it might be a illness.
I think there is a balance.
Yes.
You do want to do your own due diligence and do your own research as well, but not go beyond a certain point, because if you try and find something that is wrong with you,
You're gonna find it.
You will find it, and that's the bottom line. And I think for me, it's just about supporting you and trying to be there for you, and just trying to get you out of that mindset as much as I could. But you already had this thought pattern that was just circulating and festering in your mind, and you needed to get an expert opinion, which we did many times. I think a few times at the doctor. I think you had a few panic attacks and said we need to go to the doctor like tomorrow. But it all worked out well, and I think the moral of the story is, just realize that obviously your hormones are going to affect the way you think and the way you feel. And for me, I think it's just, and for the guy, it's just to provide the support.
Yeah, don't call your partner crazy, because she's not. It's huge, the hormonal change that she's going through, and yeah, just be there. And sometimes you'll need to go to the doctor, and it might be. Sometimes it's better be safe than sorry when it's something like pregnancy, where there can be so many complications. But it's good as well. Something that really helped me is the hypnobirthing tracks. That
Positive
gets
affirmations.
Exactly. So that helped me.
Affirmations such as.
Basically, it says something like your baby and your body are working together in harmony to offer you a peaceful birth, which is for the birth, but also it's just basically telling you that your body knows what to do. Your body is meant to carry a baby and birth. So obviously, this doesn't make you like completely unaware. Yes, there can be complications, but it's just to
trust the process.
To trust the process, yeah. And I'm just not telling you to ignore everything and not go to the doctor, but yeah, just to trust the process and to trust your body.
Cool. So what are we going to be chatting about the next video?
So next video, so I would love to talk about the postpartum. So if you have any questions that you would like answer about the postpartum, just post them down there. And would like to talk as well about eventually about breastfeeding. How sometimes it's hard, and you should get help with breastfeeding from the beginning to get you in track. So we'll talk about that as well. So if you had any questions, just post them down there.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Sienna, say bye-bye. Turn her around. Say bye-bye to the world.